Hello and welcome to GameGen. It looks like the medieval era is making a big comeback in gaming. The cool thing is, all these upcoming games put their own spin on that idea. Some focus on managing resources and keeping your people happy, while others are more about politics, battles, and big decisions that can make or break your rule. In this video, we're checking out some of the most exciting medieval strategy games on the way. Let's get started. The Guild, Europa 1410. If you've ever played the Guild series before, you know it's not your typical medieval sim. The Guild Europa 1410 goes back to the roots of the franchise, inspired by the cult classic Europa 1400 The Guild, and it's all about dynasties, power, and a whole lot of scheming. You don't just build a base here, you're building a legacy. You'll start as the head of a humble family with maybe a small workshop or trade, but the goal isn't just to get rich. It's to make your name echo through history, whether that's as a respected noble, a ruthless crime lord, or a clever politician who bends the city to their will. The game blends life sim, city politics, and strategy in a way that keeps you hooked because every choice ripples through generations. Do you play it safe and run an honest blacksmith shop? Or do you dabble in the dark arts, running thieves, hijacking carts, and blackmailing rivals to climb the ladder faster? Both paths are viable, but each comes with its risks. Get caught in shady dealings and you might find yourself dragged to court with your rivals gleefully watching. Of course, politics is where things really heat up. Winning seats in town offices gives you real power, letting you influence laws, taxes, and justice itself. And if the voters don't love you, well, a little bribery or lost evidence can go a long way. Crown of Greed. Crown of Greed takes a really fresh approach to the classic strategy formula, and it feels like stepping into an old-school fantasy world with a clever twist. You are the heir of Rodovia trying to claim your rightful throne, but instead of barking orders at your troops like in a traditional RTS, you're more of a manipulator behind the curtain. You can suggest quests, wave shiny coins in front of wandering heroes, and set up the conditions for success. But whether they listen to you or not is another story. That little layer of unpredictability makes everything feel more alive. The kingdom itself is yours to shape, from economic hubs and workshops to fortifications and hero dwellings. It's not just about expanding your territory, but also keeping your people safe and happy, since their taxes fund your ambitions. On top of that, the heroes themselves each specialize in different tasks. Scouting, clearing enemy nests, or defending your city, and picking the right person for the job becomes half the challenge. The world of Rodovia is also dripping with atmosphere, drawing on European medieval folk culture. Dark swamps, frozen wastelands, cursed ruins, it's all there, waiting to be explored. In the end, Crown of Greed isn't about absolute power, but about being smart enough to work with the free will of all your subjects. Band of Crusaders. Band of Crusaders throws you into an alternate medieval England where knights don't just battle rival armies, they're also humanity's last line of defense against a full-blown demonic invasion. You step into the role of Grandmaster, forging a brand new order of Crusaders and deciding how to deploy your forces across a dynamic sandbox world. Every decision matters here. Send your knights to the wrong front and villages burn. Win a decisive victory and you might push the demonic tide back, at least for a while. What makes the concept so exciting is how the world is designed to react to you. Seasons change, day turns to night, and the corruption of the demons seeps into the land, altering not just the look of the battlefields, but also the challenges you'll face. Even human rivals complicate matters, meaning you're fighting on two fronts, one against other kingdoms, and another one against literal apocalypse. On the tactical side, battles play out in real-time strategy fashion. You'll build squads, specialize units, and face the brutal reality of permadeath. Losing a knight hurts, but it also makes every decision on the battlefield feel weightier. Band of Crusaders promises to blend strategic depth with an evolving story-driven world. If the full release delivers on that, well, it could be a standout for fans of medieval strategy with a supernatural twist. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more like it, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out the channel and lets me know you want more content like this. Alright, back to the video. Lessaria, Fantasy Kingdom Sim. Lessaria Fantasy Kingdom Sim is basically picking up the torch from Majesty and running with it, but instead of just copying what came before, it feels like the devs are imagining what a true third game in the series would have looked like today. The big twist is that this is an RTS where you don't directly control your heroes. You build your kingdom, recruit adventurers, and then, well, you kinda just hope for the best. Your soldiers, rogues, and mages live lives of their own, chase after treasure, or sometimes even completely ignore your carefully laid plans. Winning battles with an enemy that has a mind of its own can be hilarious, frustrating, and surprisingly rewarding all at once. The game is also shaking things up with a new combat system and hero squads, so it's not just nostalgia. It's adding fresh ideas to keep things exciting. Even if you never touched Majesty, the appeal here is just watching your little fantasy world come to life. Shops open, heroes bicker, monsters raid, and the whole place just feels busy and unpredictable. And maybe the coolest part? The devs are openly co-developing with players, running playtests and folding community feedback straight into the game. It's a kingdom sim that really feels alive, both in the game world and in how it's being built. Anvil Empires. If you've ever wanted to be a part of a living, breathing medieval world that evolves with thousands of other players, Anvil Empires is something to keep an eye on. This isn't your typical single-player city builder or RTS. It's a massively multiplayer sandbox where the entire community is building kingdoms, waging wars, and creating history together. The core idea is persistence. Everything you build, from small villages to sprawling fortresses, actually stays in the game world, shaping it for everyone else. Resources aren't magically infinite either. You and your allies will need to gather, trade, and fight over them, which creates a real sense of stakes. If your town thrives, you can become a hub of trade and culture. But if your defenses fail, raiders or rival factions can actually tear it down and claim it for themselves. What makes it really ambitious is the scale. Battles aren't just skirmishes with a handful of units. We're talking about potentially hundreds of players organizing armies, laying sieges, and carving out empires together. This is definitely one of the more experimental projects on the list, but it's the kind of game that could grow into something huge if it gets the right community behind it. Chronicles Medieval. Now, Chronicles Medieval goes in a very different direction. It's not about rewriting history with rifles or building empires with thousands of strangers. Instead, it's more about immersion in a grounded medieval experience, where you're living through the politics, struggles, and daily life of the era. At its heart, it's a blend of strategy and role-playing. You manage your lands, deal with your subjects, and make the tough calls that come with ruling. But unlike a lot of medieval strategy games that keep things at a distant, kingdom-wide scale, this one zooms in on the human side of things. You're not just looking at numbers and cities on a map, you're interacting with actual characters who have their own personalities, goals, and grudges. The game promises a more story-driven approach, where your choices shape not just the success of your kingdom, but also the lives of the people around you. Think of it as part Crusader Kings, part RPG. You might be negotiating with nobles one day, then dealing with a peasant uprising the next. Each decision ripples through the world, affecting alliances, stability, and even how people see you as a ruler. What I like about this direction is that it feels more personal than a lot of other medieval sims. It's less about micromanaging endless resources and more about the drama of medieval leadership. Earth of Oryn. Earth of Oryn is one of those games that quietly sneaks up on you, the kind that looks simple at first glance, but ends up being something you can sink dozens of hours to without even realizing. It's a medieval city builder game where the core focus isn't on flashy battles or epic politics, but on the slower, more thoughtful process of growing a kingdom from the ground up. You start small, just a handful of settlers trying to survive in a harsh world, and gradually expand into something much grander. What I really like about Earth of Oryn is how it balances survival with creativity. It isn't just about plopping down houses and calling it a day. You have to think about resources, weather, terrain, and how your choices affect the people living under you. Crops fail if you don't plan ahead, diseases spread if you don't prepare, and of course, there's that constant threat of raiders or rival factions looking to test your defenses. But beyond the survival mechanics, the game has this really cozy, handcrafted feel. The visuals are warm and painterly, almost storybook-like, which makes the process of city building surprisingly relaxing. Instead of feeling stressful, it gives off a watching your world come to life vibe. The developers have also promised that storytelling will play a big role here. Your kingdom doesn't just grow in size, it grows in character, with decisions shaping its culture and identity over time. Game of Thrones: War for Westeros. This one is nostalgia and chaos in the best proportions. Classic, real-time strategy, but set in Westeros. The setup is classic Westeros. 4 major factions, Stark, Lannister, Targaryen, and even the Icy Night King's forces duke it out over a sprawling, 4 times inspired world map. Each region offers resources, choke points, and opportunities for expansion. You'll build, research, and train armies in the familiar RTS style, then march banners across borders in the hope that your enemies are too busy elsewhere to notice your cavalry raiding their farms. But here's where things get interesting. Just like the books and the show, it isn't just about who can build the biggest army. It's about timing, influence, and betrayal. The devs describe the core multiplayer as kind of a board game style sandbox, where 4 players compete for the Iron Throne. Think Settlers of Catan or Risk vibes, but with dragons and White Walkers in the mix. Alliances are absolutely necessary. You'll need help to contain a growing rival or push back against a frosty invasion from the north, but only one house can sit in the throne at the end. That means every alliance comes with an invisible timer, and every handshake is basically a prelude to a knife in the dark. Mechanically, battles will be squad-based rather than micromanaging every soldier, giving the game a feel a bit closer to Battle for Middle-earth than pure Age of Empires. Dungeons & Kingdoms. Dungeons & Kingdoms is one of those games that really doesn't want you to pick just one genre. It's a full-on mashup of medieval city building, kingdom management, and dungeon crawling RPG action. You start out as the leader of a raging group of refugees, fleeing your old home in search of a fresh start. From there, it's up to you to take a barren patch of land and slowly turn it into a thriving settlement. That means gathering resources, farming, hunting wildlife, and constructing buildings with a modular system that offers more than 500 unique pieces, so you can really shape your village exactly how you like. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Survival isn't just about building houses and fields. You'll need to sculpt the terrain itself, flattening land for crops, digging moats for defense, or even raising platforms to create layered towns. And since there's a full day-night cycle, danger is never far away. Raiders, wild beasts, and other threats can strike when you least expect it, keeping you on your toes. On top of the management side, the game lets you dive into dangerous dungeons and crypts in full third-person RPG style. You'll fight monsters, take down bosses, and haul back treasures and rare resources that help your kingdom advance. Add in customizable colonists, legendary heroes, quests, and journalists to guide your progress, and, well, you've got a blend of strategy and action that feels surprisingly fresh. Dinolords. Dinolords asks a question that no history book dared to print. What if your medieval army had a dinosaur core? It's an RTS where the familiar rhythm of castles, spears, and siege engines collides with raptors, trikes, and the occasional "please don't eat the quartermaster" moment. The core loop is classic. Expand, gather, tech up, pressure the map, but every decision is flavored with prehistoric muscle. The game blends real-time strategy with some action RPG elements, meaning you're not just a faceless commander giving orders from above. You actually take part in the fights yourself, sword and bow in hand, while also managing your troops and defenses. You'll construct modular castles, train specialized units, and tame the land around you to keep your settlement thriving. But the real twist is how dinosaurs completely reshape warfare. In this alternate history, Viking explorers discovered dinosaur eggs in a glacier, and before long, these beasts are not only domesticated, but bred specifically for war. So, instead of just worrying about enemy knights and siege engines, you'll be bracing for Triceratops charges or figuring out how to use a raptor pack to ambush your opponents. It's a strategy game that feels both similar and totally unique, with that just one more battle hook baked right in. Medieval Crafter, Blacksmith. Medieval Crafter, Blacksmith is one of those games that takes something simple, like hammering out a sword, and turns it into a whole adventure. You're not just sitting in a workshop all day, though honestly there's quite a bit of satisfaction in shaping metal into armor and weapons, but you're also heading down into the mines, digging up your own ores and experimenting with magical enhancements to give your creations that extra spark. What I like about this one is that it's not just crafting for the sake of crafting. You're part of a lively little village where people come to you with requests, each one with their own quirks and stories. Sometimes you'll be making a sword for a knight, other times a simple horseshoe for a farmer, and it all feels connected to the world around you. Add in quests, seasonal festivals, and the fact that you can upgrade your workshop to really make it your own, and you've got this cozy yet surprisingly deep mix of time management and RPG-style progression. It's the kind of game where you start out thinking, I'll just make one more blade, and then suddenly hours are gone. Our Freedom. Our Freedom is one of those games that mixes the laid-back fun of building a medieval settlement with the high-stakes excitement of actually fighting to protect it. You start as William, an ordinary villager whose life falls apart after a tragedy. Instead of fading away though, he decides to fight back by gathering a group of survivors and creating a new home. One that's safe, self-sufficient, and strong enough to stand against the world. The settlement part of the game is super cozy. You're not just plopping down random buildings, you're carefully building farms, workshops, smithies, even things like weaving huts and beekeeping spots to make sure your people have what they need. Watching the village grow from a couple of shaky wooden houses into a thriving little kingdom feels really rewarding. There's a lot of hands-on crafting too, so you'll get involved in things like forging weapons, making armor, and producing the tools your villagers use every day. But it's not all about peacefully living, because once your village is built, you'll need to defend it. And that is where the RPG side kicks in. You can train up your soldiers, gather allies, and take part in sieges, tournaments, and proper medieval battles. You're not just some invisible ruler either, you can actually fight alongside your people and feel like you're right in the middle of the action. Strategos. Strategos is a massive new real-time tactics game set in the world of classical antiquity, and it's aiming to carve out its own space next to giants like Total War. Published by Microprose, the game ditches the overworld empire management and zooms in on what really matters. Huge, detailed battles where positioning, formations, and timing decide everything. One of the wildest things about Strategos is just how many options you have. At launch, there'll be over 120 playable factions and more than 250 unique units spanning nearly 1,000 years of history. We're talking everything from Greek hoplites and Roman legions to Persian immortals and even smaller, lesser-known forces like Celtiberians and Kushites. If you're a history nerd, this is basically a dream come true. But what really sets the game apart is its command system. You can't just zoom out and micromanage an entire battlefield like in Total War. Instead, generals can only give orders to units within range of their voice, or by sending couriers on horseback. It makes battles feel more grounded, chaotic, and authentic, since communication and positioning actually matter. On top of that, the AI has been built to behave more like real armies, flanking, retreating, regrouping, and coordinating attacks. Harrowlands. Harrowlands drops you into the world of Eldorath, a strange, mystical land where you're not just building a settlement, you're shaping the lives and stories of everyone who calls it home. This isn't just another colony sim where your villagers are faceless drones. Here, every inhabitant has their own backstory, quirks, and traits that affect how they work, fight, and get along with others. Sometimes they'll form friendships or rivalries on their own, and you'll have to deal with the fallout, good or bad. You'll decide how your story begins. Maybe your people are fugitives who barely escaped from a cruel warlord or survivors of a dark ritual gone wrong. From there, you'll guide them through everyday struggles like farming, crafting, and building while also dealing with big picture threats like Reaver raids, imperial demands, and mysterious cults lurking in the shadows. The world itself is massive and procedurally generated, which means every playthrough feels fresh. You'll trade with merchants, strike shaky alliances with neighboring villages, or risk angering powerful factions like Inquisitors and Court Mages. You can also send your people on quests, explore ancient ruins, and uncover legendary loot. Or, if you'd rather, lean into the darker side of leadership and raid villages, collude with Reavers, or serve the Emperor's will. County of Fortune. County of Fortune takes the classic city building formula and zooms way out. Instead of carefully placing every little house or bakery, you're running an entire medieval county. Dozens of villages, each with their own quirks, problems, and personalities. Think of it less like being the mayor of one city, and more like being the regional lord trying to keep a whole patchwork of squabbling towns from collapsing into chaos. Each settlement grows its own way depending on how you guide it. Maybe one becomes an industrious mining hub, while another develops a strong farming culture or a reputation for trade. Over time, these places develop unique cultural traits, which makes them feel alive but also creates tension. Neighboring villages might compete, clash, or cooperate, and it's really up to you to manage those relationships. The focus here isn't micromanaging buildings, but logistics and big picture strategy. You'll be making sure food, resources, and goods flow smoothly across your region while balancing the politics of each community. As your community expands, every decision you make ripples outward, shaping not just one town, but an entire network of settlements. Set in a procedurally generated medieval England, every campaign feels different. One run might see your county flourish into a tightly knit trade powerhouse, while another could descend into factional rivalry and backstabbing. Anno 117, Pax Romana. Anno 117 Pax Romana takes the tried and true city building formula of Anno and plants it firmly in the Roman Empire. but with a twist. Instead of always starting in one location like in Anno 1800, you now choose where your story begins. Do you build your first bustling city in sunny Latium with its terracotta rooftops and lavender fields, or do you brave the wild, rainy marshes of Albion, where every boardwalk you build feels like a battle against nature itself? What's really cool here is how different those two provinces feel. In Latium, you're crafting the kind of Roman settlement you probably imagine right away. Roads, villas, aqueducts, all the classics. Albion, though, flips the script. You'll be dredging cockles and eels for food, mixing mud and reeds into wattle and daub houses, and building entire villages perched on stilts over wetlands. Every structure, every production chain forces you to adapt to this strange frontier land through clever planning. Then there's the cultural choice that shapes your whole city. Do you Romanize your Celtic citizens into Romano-Celts, adopting imperial culture and tech, or lean into the old ways, keeping Celtic faith and traditions alive? Each path changes not just what your citizens need, but how your city looks and functions. Kingmakers. So, Kingmakers is honestly one of the most fascinating twists on the medieval strategy formula I've seen in years. At first glance, it looks like your usual large-scale medieval battle simulator. Armies clashing, knights charging on horseback, trebuchets hurling rocks across the battlefield. But then, out of nowhere, you whip out an assault rifle. Yep, that's the hook. You're not just a medieval ruler. You're a time-traveling modern soldier thrown into the Middle Ages with access to contemporary firearms, vehicles, and tech. What makes it even cooler is how it balances both strategy and action. You can pull back into an RTS-style view to command entire armies, positioning troops, directing siege engines, and setting up defenses. But then, at any moment, you can drop back into your character and fight in the thick of it yourself. Whether that's sniping enemies from afar or driving a Humvee straight through enemy lines, it's basically like Mountain Blade meets Total War. If you also happen to smuggle in a modern arsenal from 2025. And since it has both large-scale battles and direct control, it appeals to both strategy lovers and action fans. The game is set to launch in October of 2025, and it's already got a ton of buzz. Probably because it's just such a wild, unexpected mix of genres. Norse: Oath of Blood. Norse Oath of Blood throws you right into Viking Age Norway, mixing turn-based tactics with settlement building and a personal story of vengeance. You play as Gunnar, a young warrior faced into exile after his father, Jarl Gripper, is killed by the ruthless Steinar Farspear. With your home destroyed, it's up to you to rebuild, gather allies, and lead your warband as you carve your path to justice. The battles here aren't just about brute force. Positioning, terrain, and smart unit combos make all the difference. Each warrior has their own skills, and with customizable gear and upgrades, you can shape your army to fit your style. But it's not only about the battlefield. You'll also be managing your village, assigning villagers, upgrading buildings, and crafting authentic Viking gear that directly impacts how strong your warriors become. What makes it even more exciting, though, is the story, written by best-selling author Giles Christian, which adds a rich and authentic feel to your journey. At its heart, this is a saga about rebuilding, strategy, and the tough choices that will decide the fate of your people. I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to leave a comment below if any of these games caught your eye, or if there are other upcoming releases you'd like to hear about. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more gaming content in the future. Thanks for watching.